Well, I'm really excited to share episode 2 in series 3 of Sacred Stories of the Spirit. In this series, I am getting stuck into this idea of consciousness in the workplace. So this is really about having conversations that help us be more present in the world of work. And with this conversation today with Digby Scott, we're really talking about listening and how we can be even more present by listening in different ways when we are facilitating or in the room with people. Being open to getting all of the information as much as we can to really help make the best of our time, how to hear what's really going on and how to move with what's going on as well. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. Let's jump in. Digby, welcome. How are you?
Good to see you, Jordan. I'm great.
Now, listen, for my listeners that may not know you, you are in the business of change. Tell me how you got to be in the business of change and leading change.
I got to be in the business of change because I was born. And like all of us, the version of me that exists today is not the same version that existed when I was born. And so change is, it sounds a bit flippant saying that, yet I think at a very young age, I got fascinated by the process of having to deal with change. We moved schools 3 or 4 times as a kid. Yeah. So having to adapt to that and going from born on a farm, then moved to the city, then back to the country, and then back to the city. And, there's a kind of a muscle that I built.
Yes.
Over that time. And what I learned was that you can always learn something new, yet it's hard as well at the same time. There's a lot of stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I feel like my personality has sort of been wired to think about and I'm quite reflective, I think, in terms of this stuff fascinates me. And also at another level, I reckon, that's my story, but it's also our story. As humanity, at some level, at a DNA level, are essentially the same as we were, 100,000 years ago. Yet our context is ever evolving. And, we could say, there's lots of lessons to learn from history, which is true, that stuff doesn't change. Yet our context is the context that it is not the context that we had 100 years ago. And so if we're going to live meaningful lives, then we need to, I think we've got a choice. We can say change is done to us and we just kind of grit and hang on and get to the end of our time on the planet going, that was interesting. Or we can become adept at moving with it. And maybe the metaphor is the stream, the river. It's like you're going to swim upstream or downstream with this thing. And I feel like you can have a better life and make more of a difference if you're going downstream with it.
In 2025 and beyond, if we think about the next 5 years, which I think everyone would agree that they're going to be an interesting few years. There's a lot of change happening, particularly if you think about the AI landscape and everything that's happening in the world of work. What do you think of the traits that good change practitioners will have and evolve with?
So I guess when you say change practitioners, I wouldn't say just people like me who do it for a living. I'm assuming you mean anyone who needs to practice.
Anyone who's willing to embrace change. And I think hopefully that's most of us, because I think lots of people understand that, that is, as a human, that is the nature of being human, being in a position where everything is always changing. It's hard to hold on to something and think that it won't change. But I think particularly now we're in a time where it can feel a little bit overwhelming, but it's also a really great opportunity to build those muscles. As you said,
100%.
Learning how to move with change is a muscle, which I think is an incredibly empowering thought, because we can build the skill set. We can build those muscles. We can practice. We can help each other kind of practice them. So what does that mean for us now and in the next 5 years or so?
Yeah, this is a great question. Weirdly enough, my mind goes to have a philosophical practice. And what I mean by that is the ability to step back and kind of see the bigger questions at play and how you might sit with some of these really intractable questions. And I don't know if what's the meaning of life is a particularly useful question. But, the Stoics, not that I'm deeply into the Stoics, but I like this idea of, being able to imagine or cultivate the idea that, if you lost everything, you'd still be okay, right? And I think there's something about, in Buddhism, they talk about high intention, low attachment. And so this idea that, and I learned this from a mentor years ago, actually, when I was kind of in a salesy type role years and years ago. she said, whenever you're going to meet a new client that you want to sell something to,
Yeah.
have high intention, low attachment. Like, what does that mean? It's like, well, go in with really clear intent about what outcome you want. And ideally, it's more than just, I sold them something. It's like they felt like this was a really valuable use of their time, and so did I, and there was a really good exchange. And yes, and maybe they buy something. But don't be attached to having to have it.
Yeah.
So I've sort of had that as a really key idea for me that's really served me well, that, this too will pass. Things will change. It'll evolve.
Yeah.
And if you get too attached to having to have something, then you can just get a whole lot of stress, and that's not particularly useful. So that would be one thing. I think another one is the practice of curiosity over judgment. So that judgment might be, this is good, this is bad, or that person is good, that person is bad. Yeah, how are you going to know? Whether something's good or bad? It might be just from your perspective.
Yes, exactly.
But what if you cultivated the practice of going, well, what could we learn here? Or what might be a good outcome from this bad situation?
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like, at least those two things are useful, like the curiosity and that kind of philosophical practice.
I love it.
I'm surprising myself by saying that because, you go, well, and maybe there's like, know how to use a Gantt chart and map it all out. Maybe not. No.
No, that's really interesting. Thank you. So part of your work is coaching leaders and helping leadership navigate change. What do you think are some of the most common blind spots you see?
That we can control what's going to happen.
Oh, yes.
Let me riff on that. I was working with, I won't name the name, but an organization that's full of really, really smart people who, play a really, really important role in the New Zealand landscape. And they were planning a 7-year change. So quite a long-term big thing. I remember going into one of the meeting rooms to facilitate a leadership conversation about the change they were embarking on. And they had this Gantt chart that took up, I reckon it would have been at least a 10-meter long thing on the wall, like this huge big piece of paper that had been taped together. And that was, every line was a stream of work and, right out over the 7 years. And I'm looking at this going, wonder how this is helping. And I feel like it helps by giving the illusion of control, that we know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. No. And so I think by trying to and it's understandable. I think, control means that we can kind of calm the nervous system a little, right? And we can have a sense of agency and, that we're good in this. Yet I think it can really it can trip us up, but because there's so much that we don't know. And wouldn't it be kind of useful to integrate a bit of a, how might we learn from what's happening as opposed to know what's going to happen?
Yes. Yeah. I think that's really interesting. And I'm surprised that anyone would plan a 7-year Gantt chart in the day and age that we live in, because that's a really long time. But I get the idea that, it can make us feel good if we think that we've got a map and that we can, have the map kind of be the thing. But I think it's part of the thing, but not the whole thing. And I think
what's that saying? The map is not the territory, right? And it doesn't represent the territory. This idea that a map can be useful. Yet again, don't be attached to the map, because the map, as we move forward day by day, we discover the territory and we need to continually update our maps. And by the way, the map isn't just what's on the wall, it's also what's in our brain. The stories we tell ourselves, our mental maps about, what it means to be a leader, what it means to be in change, and what does even success look like, and what it means to be effective. And all those questions all those models are useful, but they're not true. They're an interpretation of a way of how we're thinking about the world and our place in it. Yeah. And I think, so maybe coming back to your question about what other qualities do we need to cultivate, I think maybe a humility would be another one. It's like, I can't control this thing. I can have a good nudge. It's interesting. I bumped into an old friend I haven't seen for a long time in the local cafe, as we've moved house into this new suburb over the last few months, and I bumped into on the weekend, and we had a good chat. And I was telling him a little bit about the work I'm wanting to move into, do more of, which is all about this idea of how do you create a lasting impact or lead lasting impact in a way that, the impact that you might have lasts well beyond your tenure. This is not about legacy driven. It's not about ego. It's more about how might you leave an ecosystem that you're leading in a really effective way that keeps growing, evolving without you even there. And he said to me, that's a really cool question, but is it even possible? And it kind of hit me in the face because I've been like quite excited about this thing and I've been developing all this IP and starting to do some coaching.
Yeah.
And he goes, is it even possible? I'm like, have a bit of humility here, Digby. Do you think, but I think it's a really useful question because it forces me then to hold it lightly, but also at the same time, give it a bit of a nudge to see if it is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of strength test it with someone else's interrogation.
Exactly.
I think
and have a
nice.
bit more playful about it. It's like, well, we're here to, make a difference and have an impact. I don't know. We'll see. Call it a hypothesis rather than a certainty.
Yes. Yeah. No, I like it. Now, let's move on to one of the topics that we had speaking about, which is language and listening. Because you and I have had a conversation already about one of my favorite topics, which is vibrational language and what that means in terms of a holistic approach to communication between us as people and how we use all of our senses. So the way that you and I have talked about it and that I've explained it is holistic communication being an integration of signals from our conscious and subconscious mind, from our rational way of thinking, as well as our intuitive and embodied self. And so I was really interested to hear that you've also gone on to develop something which is called, I think you've called it the 4 ways of listening. So I really want you to tell me all about it and how you came to develop this framework.
Okay. I love this. I love this territory we're in. And again, just to maybe contextualize it a bit, you're asking about what are the qualities we can cultivate and noticing more over predicting, noticing over predicting. It's funny, like I'm big into water sports, which relies on, and particularly wind sports, which relies a lot on the weather. And you should see my phone. I've got so many apps that predict the weather. But and that's helpful, right? I kind of gives me a bit of an idea what to throw in the car. But when I arrive at the beach, the thing I have to do is to notice, well, what are the cloud patterns doing? And what are those trees over there doing? And how are the waves looking? And over years of observing, I'll know pretty well what I need to do, like what gear to rig and all of that stuff. Do I get it right every time? No way, maybe half the time. But it's the noticing that I think I laugh when I hear people say we get to the beach and what the app says and what the actual conditions are different. And someone will go, but it's supposed to be this. Well, that's what the app says. Well, it's not though, is it? It's that.
No, I agree. And I think it's the same, if we take it back to the world of work and this idea of wanting to control things and plan for things. If you're planning to facilitate a session with 10 people in the room, you can plan for everything, but you don't know how people are going to be in the room on that particular day at that particular hour. There's so many different variables that are always going to come into play that you can't control. So I think noticing and being open to noticing in any kind of situation, whether it's in the ocean or in a meeting room, I think it's really valuable and great for us to be
absolutely. Yeah. Someone was asking me about this the other day because I was running a session, a leadership workshop on Friday, and I had a plan.
Yeah.
Come in with a plan.
Yeah.
And I've written it all down. And that's really important, actually. I think to kind of get prepared and to be able to anticipate what might happen, but we don't know what's going to happen. And did I use the plan? I used maybe 10% of it.
Yeah.
And responded to what was going on in the moment. And I back myself. I'm able to do that. And that's when you can become in service and you can become in flow.
So.
Right? You can get into really being present to what's happening and then responding to that.
I agree. I love that connection to presence because it's something that is so valuable and it is in service of the people in the room. You are listening to the people in the room. You are responding to how they are and where they are at that particular moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So shall I tell you about these 4 lenses on listening? So you also asked about where does this come from?
Yeah.
That's a great question. And I struggle to go, I sat down one day and I worked it all out because I feel like I have these periods and you might have them too. And maybe your listeners also have this, where there's sort of like there's an integration kind of experience. It's like where years of experience of just doing what you do sort of kind of just, it all integrates into something that comes to the surface. And I feel like if I was to say how did it come to that? I think it was by not thinking about it and then just allowing some creative space and to see what bubbled up. And I've got to say, though, that there's sort of like a sensing or an intuiting that comes with this stuff. But then, man, I get rigorous. So I kind of go right brainy, intuitive-y, and then I go, hey, let's put this into AI and get it to ask me a heap of questions and then give me a bunch of empirical research behind it. And then I'll go and read that stuff and I'll upgrade it. And that'll be my left brain kicking in because it feels like that's really important. And I feel like it can't just be, oh, here's what I think. It's more like, and what's the body of research that other people might be saying about it? Yeah. So, okay. So there's been a lot of build up to this. So let me talk about these 4 lenses. So the 4 lenses, I'll just talk them through one by one. So the first lens of noticing or listening is listen to yourself. I call it personal listening. And again, it's that intuiting. It's that, how am I? What's going on for me? And the literacy you might want to have around being able to give language to what you're feeling. Often I think when I ask people, how you feeling? There's kind of like good, bad might be the binary. And then there might be angry, sad, happy, whatever. And that's kind of like a next level of granularity. But then you can get really granular, right? So be able to describe that. But firstly, notice it. Just what am I experiencing right now? And how am I responding to what's going on? I think also the curiosity to go, when you listen to yourself, how might that be showing up in the face of others? Like, how is my energy, my way of being, impacting others? I remember getting feedback quite a few years ago. I was a participant on a sort of a leadership course, and the facilitator, awesome lady, she's been a guest on my podcast, Jennifer Garvey-Berger, and she said to me, you're like a barometer for the room, right? I'm like, what do you mean by that? She said, well, you kind of, when you're energized, other people feed off that. But when you're low, and she'd observed me over a couple of days, when you're low, other people respond to that too. When your energy's lower, I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of responsibility. And I was never really aware of that. I love to say you cannot not have an impact.
Yeah.
And so to be aware of how I'm carrying myself, personal listening to me and everything that's going on there that's the place to start. It's also listening to the assumptions you're holding. Like, what's the stories I'm telling myself that may not be true? It's quite hard, hey? So how do you, I'm curious about your practices around personal listening. Like, how do you bring that to life for you?
Yeah, I will tell you that, but I want to ask you a question first, if you don't mind. I want to know what you think about this, in the sense that one of the things I feel has been a barrier to people listening to themselves is feeling emotion. So I think we have been cultivated to think that showing emotion isn't the way to go in a kind of a professional working environment. I think if we're emotive, it can mean we're not balanced, or we're not coming from a sensible position because we're going with a feeling. And I think that can get confused with intuition. So is it emotion or is it intuition, and which is it, and which is a safe thing to surface? I'm not sure that either of them have ever been particularly well received. I think that's potentially changing now, and I think there's different ways to frame it. But I think historically that hasn't been well received. So I think when we think about listening to ourselves, I wonder if we often stop ourselves from processing and believing in what is coming through our own intuition and feelings, because we say it's not valid, or I can't talk about that because it won't be well received. What do you think about that?
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I can speak from personal experience to that, that it's too dangerous to feel.
Yeah.
It's too scary
Yeah.
to process and acknowledge what's going on, because the story I have is that to be a leader means to be strong. Or that if I confront this thing that's there, then I'll fall apart and I won't be able to be useful to anyone. And my identity, that my imposter that I carry around in my head might prove itself right, or whatever it is. So, I feel like I was responding to someone on LinkedIn this morning actually about a similar thing around, leaders not asking questions but feeling like they've got to give answers. And that's because that's what a good leader does.
Yeah, right.
Provides the answers.
Yeah.
And I was just having a conversation with this fellow on LinkedIn about, and I suspect they know how to ask good questions, yet the context they're in will make it dangerous to do so.
Yes.
or at least not reward it.
Yeah.
And so I think the same comes to with emotions. It's like if the context is that, this is not a place to show emotion,
Yeah.
the lack of safety that might be perceived is the thing that and I think as leaders, we bring the weather, right? How do we create an environment where it
Yes.
is safe
Yes,
to
exactly.
discuss and show emotion?
Yeah.
And the more I am in the presence of emotion, the more I'm like, oh man, how can you not have?
Yeah, because I think that there's a lot in there. And I think when you asked me, what do I do to kind of explore this space of, personal listening? And I think that's exactly what I've done in my spaces with teams, is create that safe space, because I really value what comes through people's intuition and emotion. And I don't want it to be left behind because we can't hold a space for it. And I think you do have to kind of go first. So you do have to be vulnerable. You do have to share your own stories. You have to kind of not be afraid to fall over, because I think there are real kernels of insight that are hidden there that we often don't feel confident to bring forward, because we think that, it's subjective. It's not going to be valuable to the room because it's my subjective personal opinion. But I think this is how insight comes to the body sometimes.
Yeah, that's really helpful. There's a little saying I sometimes use, which is be informational, not emotional. But I think that as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking it's kind of like share information about your emotion. And
Yes.
and because I think what often happens is when we're emotional and we're
Yes.
kind of like maybe, there's tears or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
that can be perceived as being unhelpful.
Yes.
Yet if you're able to say, look, right now I'm feeling really confused.
Yes.
But you're saying it in an informational way.
Yes. I like it.
And I think that's a gateway. I
Yeah.
feel like that's a really helpful way to go. Look, right now I'm feeling quite disappointed, or
Yeah.
I'm feeling like so excited. And I think to be able to name it, but not
Yes.
necessarily project it all out there,
Yes.
might be a way forward.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
Should we move to the next one?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So we just talked about personal listening.
Yeah.
The next one is relational listening, which is essentially if you're with you and I, if it's one-on-one, it's noticing how you are and how we're being with each other. If it's in a group and I'm leading a group, it's noticing how the group is responding to me, but also how the group is with each other. And the members of the group are with each other. And, it's be able to name the dynamic at play, to be to go, this is feeling a bit awkward right now.
Yeah.
Or I'm noticing that these three people are the talky ones in the group.
Yeah.
And this person has said a thing for 10 minutes and they don't appear to want to. And noticing how people bounce off each other and how they bounce off you. Yeah, it's that stuff that I think you can become a really strong facilitative leader when you're able to notice relational aspects.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing I've noticed is in a conversation, and whether it's one-on-one or whether it's a group, it's when you notice kind of like there's a mood shift or there's an energy shift. And if you're kind of in tune to everyone's sort of just gone flat or everything's kind of like gone a bit weird or whatever.
Yeah.
To be able to name that and inquire about it as opposed to just barrel on regardless. I mean, we've all seen people who are just tone deaf and they're losing the audience. It's oh no, I'll just carry on because that's what my script says I have to do.
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting one, because I think it's an art, right, in how to navigate this, because you want to name it, but you don't want to embarrass people. You don't want to call anything out that you can't come back from. So how you move forward and how you bring people back into that kind of shared sensibility.
Well, one thing I do, here's something I do. I think any leader can do this when they're working with a group. I do what's called a thermometer, right? Which is you get your thumb and you go, you notice an energy shift in the room. You just go, how's the energy right now? And you kind of like show us your thumb, and it can go from like pointing right up to pointing right down or somewhere in between. And, then you might go, and then I might go something like, okay, so what would it take for our thumbs to go up a bit?
Yeah.
And people usually would say, can we just have a 5-minute stretch?
Yeah.
Great. Let's do that. So I think it's kind of like be able to name it and then like invite others into that conversation.
Yeah. Nice.
That kind of thing. I think so. To be tuned into the dynamic at play. Yeah. Shall I do the third one?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Third one, so we've talked about personal, we've talked about relational. So personal is you, relational is us or them,
Yep.
and then directional is it. And what I mean by that is pay attention to the direction of the conversation. Where is this heading?
Yeah.
Listen to and notice, are we on track? Are we off track? Are we in the weeds? Are we too abstract? And that, I think a prerequisite of that is having a real clear sense of purpose.
Yeah.
Like, what are we actually here for?
Yeah.
Why are we even getting together? And what outcomes are we after?
Yeah.
And so the obvious question is, how are we tracking? How are we going against what we're trying to get to?
Yeah.
In relation to our outcome, where are we?
Yeah.
What's becoming clearer? What's confusing? What do we need to workshop a bit more? What do we need to park? And I feel like it seems like such an obvious thing to do, to be able to just go, how are we going? Like, we've got an hour. How are we going?
Yeah.
And often it's just asking the question at the start, like, can we just clarify what we want to get out of this conversation?
Yeah. Like kind of the direction my brain has just gone in is this is where I think some nice surprises can happen, because I think you can have your own idea about what the purpose is, but I think this is where serendipity can happen, and you can end up, the direction can change, and sometimes it's good. Sometimes you end up in a different spot to where you thought you would end up, but it might be better. It might be a richer conversation. It might show you some things that you hadn't thought about. So I kind of like the idea
I love that.
Directional is good, but it may not be the direction you thought you would go in.
That's really cool, isn't it? Like, hold that lightly.
Yes.
I mean, again, high intention, low attachment, right? And it might be a good question to ask is, what's surprising out of this conversation so far? And what are we learning?
Yeah.
And what seems to be emerging in the conversation?
Yes, exactly.
And where does this conversation want to go next?
Yes. It has its own life sometimes.
Yeah. And you're all in the river with it, right?
Yeah.
It's coming back to that metaphor. I feel like it's like, where's the river heading?
Yeah.
And again, the illusion of control versus allowing to, all this is kind of mashing together, isn't it? All of these ideas.
Yeah.
And I think, again, the noticing part of this is not so much controlling, but it's more, what's happening with this conversation?
Exactly.
And then be able to name that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, I think directional is really important.
Yeah. Nice.
Yet the fourth one is another it. So the it for the fourth one is the contextual it.
Yeah.
So contextual noticing, contextual listening. And this is, I think the question that goes with this one is what's the context? How is the context that this person I'm talking to or these people I'm talking with, how's their context shaping how they're showing up? And it might be an age thing, right? It might be talking with a 10-year-old. Their context is really different to an adult's context a lot of the time. So how is that shaping how I might have a conversation with this person? Or it might be you're in the middle of a restructure. I'll give you an example of when I didn't get the context and I found it was a really challenging situation. I was brought in to do a talk to a group of leaders, one of those kind of leaders forums, and they usually have like a day and they get all their leaders together for the business. And I was in for this afternoon after lunch slot, the challenging one. And I was talking about the power of story. And, it's a pretty good topic. And most audiences really get into that. And I got up and sort of did my thing. In about 20 minutes, I'm like, oh, this is a tough crowd. No one's really responding. I'm like, I've done this a few times before. I know, this is good stuff. What's happening here?
Yeah.
Anyway, I kind of got through it. And then I said, by the CEO or it's the head of HR or something, I said, look, am I missing something here? Like, what's happening? Because the brief was really clear, but no one really picked this up and ran with it. It was really hard. And they said, oh, yeah, we forgot to tell you, we announced a restructure this morning. And a lot of the people in the room are their jobs are, up for, they may not have a job, essentially. I didn't get that context. No. And so, there's this whole, if you can understand the shaping forces.
Yes.
And there's, if we think about now, the shaping forces are huge, right? I try not to watch too much news because that context will just spin me.
Yeah.
So but I think it's about, what's going on for this person?
Yeah.
And even asking that question, how are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So they're the four. So there's personal, relational, directional, and contextual ways of noticing. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were to give one tip to people about how they can be more intentional listeners, what would it be?
So one practical thing to do might be to ask yourself before you're meeting with a group or a person, is what's my state? How am I doing? If I was to give a word to how am I right now coming into this, what would it be? And how do I want to be? So I think they're two things.
Yeah.
I reckon if you wanted to go to level 2, ask yourself which one of these 4 levels of listening do I want to practice today?
Yeah,
Because
nice.
all of, even if you just start with one, it
Yes.
feeds into the others anyway.
Yeah.
And I can give you a little handout to share with
Yes,
you,
perfect.
with your listeners as well. But I reckon, the underpinning one is listen to yourself. So how am I and how do I want to be?
Yeah,
Mm.
I love it. Well, thank you, Digby. Any final words of wisdom before we finish up for today?
That's the hardest
Yeah.
question. Practice high intention, low attachment.
Yeah, I love
Remember
that.
this too will pass and that you'll be okay.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful conversation. I love it. I love everything about listening, and I think there's some great tips that we can all practice there. So,
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Jordan.
well, I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Digby today. I think listening and learning how to listen more deeply, broadly, however we can improve and enhance our listening skills, I think we are better fit for purpose as human beings. We can sense what's going on in a room. We can help a room full of people move together cohesively by really understanding the energy and the tone of what's going on. So I hope that has given you something to think about today. And I really want to thank Digby for his time and his fantastic energy that he brings to these conversations. You can find out more about Digby Scott and his podcast, which is called Dig Deeper, in the information in the show notes. Check out all the stuff he has to offer. He's a great practitioner and has lots to teach us all. And in the meantime, take care, and I hope to see you again for another episode very soon. Right, well, here we are in the extended version of the podcast episode. We've just had a great conversation with Digby Scott on the art of listening. Now we are going to move into this segment of the podcast, which is really about having a mindful moment. And this has come about because as someone who is both a professional and a creative practitioner, I've really found that mindful moments are wonderful to just process life. Things move so quickly, particularly with technology and AI as it is today, that really just having time to sit with our thoughts is actually really valuable, and it helps us calibrate and recalibrate and really think about what we've been hearing and listening and learning, and at the same time have some fun and time for creative play, which I think is very nourishing, and it can help our nervous system just settle. So we were in the right frame of mind to be able to really absorb this new knowledge and insights that we hear from these great guests. So today, what I thought we would talk about is the art of attendance. You might remember from the previous episode, I introduced this theme of the A to Z of vibrational language. So the A to Z is my own alphabet, my own ideas on how we can be more attentive, how we can use our embodied experience as humans, in our bodies, using all of our sensory capabilities to engage, interact, understand the environments that we're in, and receive as many signals as we possibly can to help us really get as much information and to be able to calibrate that information. So that's what the A to Z of vibrational language is. It is about what is going on beneath the words and around the words and with the words. We have to use our bodies for this practice, and using our bodies helps us process, as I've said before, process all of the information that's coming at us. So this is really helpful. This is one of the practices that I find really relaxing. So what I'm going to take you through now is some of my mindful mandala doodles. Each episode in series 3, I'm going to be sharing some of these little creative practices that help me just have 5 minutes to unwind, de-stress, download, defrag. And as I've mentioned before, there is a little how-to guide on my website. So if you want to do this with me, I've created a little tutorial to help you get started. But really all you need is a pen and paper. So you can either watch and listen or come and make mandalas with me. You don't need very much time. You don't need a lot of materials. And it's just a nice, fun way to have a mindful moment in our busy days. So today I'm going to be showing you my doodles, and we're going to be talking about the art of attendance. So we are at letter A in the A to Z. I'm not going from A right through to Z. We actually started with C first for curiosity. So we've gone curiosity, now attendance. And this is about attending to life, being present. If you remember as a kid, you may have been at school and you had to be at roll call. Well, the idea of coming to be at roll call is kind of the basics. This is where attendance starts. We are turning up. We are being present. And I thought it was a wonderful connection with what Digby was talking about today, which is the art of listening. So the art of attendance is really bringing our full selves to the moment, and that just opens so many doors. So I hope you enjoyed this little additional segment of the podcast, and you can find out more about the A to Z of vibrational language on my website, harcourt-hughes.com. And I'm going to be adding resources as we go, so you can have little workbooks to practice with as well. And don't forget to check out that Mindful Mandala tutorial if you want to do some creative play alongside me. Okay, let's get going. Right, well, here we are in the extended version of the podcast episode. We've just had a great conversation with Digby Scott on the art of listening. Now we are going to move into this segment of the podcast, which is really about having a mindful moment. And this has come about because as someone who is both a professional and a creative practitioner, I've really found that mindful moments are wonderful to just process life. Things move so quickly, particularly with technology and AI as it is today, that really just having time to sit with our thoughts is actually really valuable, and it helps us calibrate and recalibrate and really think about what we've been hearing and listening and learning, and at the same time have some fun and time for creative play, which I think is very nourishing, and it can help our nervous system just settle. So we were in the right frame of mind to be able to really absorb this new knowledge and insights that we hear from these great guests. So today, what I thought we would talk about is the art of attendance. You might remember from the previous episode, I introduced this theme of the A to Z of vibrational language. So the A to Z is my own alphabet, my own ideas on how we can be more attentive, how we can use our embodied experience as humans, in our bodies, using all of our sensory capabilities to engage, interact, understand the environments that we're in, and receive as many signals as we possibly can to help us really get as much information and to be able to calibrate that information. So that's what the A to Z of vibrational language is. It is about what is going on beneath the words and around the words and with the words. We have to use our bodies for this practice, and using our bodies helps us process, as I've said before, process all of the information that's coming at us. So this is really helpful. This is one of the practices that I find really relaxing. So what I'm going to take you through now is some of my mindful mandala doodles. Each episode in series 3, I'm going to be sharing some of these little creative practices that help me just have 5 minutes to unwind, de-stress, download, defrag. And as I've mentioned before, there is a little how-to guide on my website. So if you want to do this with me, I've created a little tutorial to help you get started. But really all you need is a pen and paper. So you can either watch and listen or come and make mandalas with me. You don't need very much time. You don't need a lot of materials. And it's just a nice, fun way to have a mindful moment in our busy days. So today I'm going to be showing you my doodles, and we're going to be talking about the art of attendance. So we are at letter A in the A to Z. I'm not going from A right through to Z. We actually started with C first for curiosity. So we've gone curiosity, now attendance. And this is about attending to life, being present. If you remember as a kid, you may have been at school and you had to be at roll call. Well, the idea of coming to be at roll call is kind of the basics. This is where attendance start. We are turning up. We are being present. And I thought it was a wonderful connection with what Digby was talking about today, which is the art of listening. So the art of attendance is really bringing our full selves to the moment, and that just opens so many doors. So I hope you enjoyed this little additional segment of the podcast, and you can find out more about the A to Z of vibrational language on my website, harcourt-hughes.com. And I'm going to be adding resources as we go, so you can have little workbooks to practice with as well. And don't forget to check out that Mindful Mandala tutorial if you want to do some creative play alongside me. Okay, let's get going. So as you doodle or as you watch me muck around with my mandalas, remember this is just creative play. We don't need to be doing anything to be having something beautiful at the end. It's just really a practice that helps us relax and unwind. The art of attendance is the idea that we're exploring today. And I think that there's lots of lovely ways that we can consider what it means to attend. It can mean attend to our body, attend to what creates a sense of aliveness in us, attend attend to the recurring themes that keep popping up in our lives. I think we all have those. But sometimes it takes time to just reflect, what are the things that keep coming up? And then once we've done a little bit of a life review in that sense, what do we think that these themes mean for us? What is there for us to learn? We can attend to the subtle signals that arrive into our sensory perception through our bodies, through our environment, through our intuition. Sometimes these subtler signals get overridden with more urgent life requirements. So it can take time and quiet space to tune into those more subtle signals. We can attend to life through ritual, and a ritual could be simply a regular afternoon walk or a morning meditation, or this doodling ritual could be the one that you choose. You can attend to your environment. What is going on in your garden today? What's flowering? What needs some TLC? You can attend to your creative practice if you have one. This could well be your creative practice. And lastly, I want to invite you to attend to avoidance. What are you potentially avoiding, and what could you face, with the encouragement there that facing it may be easier and quicker than continuing to avoid it? Well, that's it for The Art of Attendance today. I hope you've enjoyed the full podcast with this extended little mindful moment included. Perhaps you've had some time to doodle yourself. Perhaps you've just enjoyed thinking about the art of attendance and how we can listen more deeply and be more present, both in the world of work and in our own professional practice. And I hope you get the chance to explore how creative practice can help us balance out all of the stresses of life as well. So this is it for this episode of Sacred Stories of the Spirit, and I hope to see you here again soon. I'm Jordan Harcourt-Hughes. Take good care.